In the last example of chapter 6, we are given a complete program that uses a file of zip code information to allow a user to find zip codes within a certain distance of a zip code of their choice. We don't have the file on this computer, so we're not going to be able to run the complete program. However, the output is in the book, and that will be what we will be coding for this problem. So the first thing that we need to do is write an introduction that introduces the user to our program. So we are going to have a method that does this, because this will save a lot of space when we're trying to type it into our main method, and it will also be very convenient. So we'll comment intro right here, and then below this we're going to call the method. We'll call it give intro, so we're just going to do give intro with parameters like this. Once we do this, we can hover over it and click create method give intro. It's going to be a static void called give intro. It's going to be void because it's not returning anything, it's just printing things out. And then we are going to not take any parameters because all we're doing is printing. So from the book, we are given these print lines, and these print lines are just introducing the user to the program. There's nothing really special about them. They're just sysout.print lines, and there are 5 rows of them. There's 6 rows in the book, but I just added a /n for a new line in here to keep it clean. After we call our introduction, we want to get user input. So we'll comment out get user input, and then in here, since we're getting user input, we're going to need a scanner. We'll have a scanner, and we'll call this input, and we're going to set it equal to a new scanner where we have system.in. We're going to close that line, and then we're going to hover over and import scanner. After we do this, we are going to ask the user what zip code that they are interested in. So we need a sysout. It's going to be a print instead of print line. That way our input can be on the same line as our output. And we're just going to write what zip code are you interested in. And then we need a string to store this. We're going to call it target since this is our target zip code. We're going to do string target and set this equal to input.next. After this, we also want to ask the user the proximity of the zip code. So what is the area around their zip code that they want to look for? So we're just going to have another print statement, and we're just going to say in what proximity in miles ? And then after this, we're going to store the miles in a double. So we'll do double, we'll call this miles, and we're going to set it equal to input.next double. So this gets the target and this gets the double. After we do this, we want to start finding everything out. Before we do this, we need to read in the file. We don't have the file, but we are going off the book, so we are just going to read in a pretend file. And to do this, we are going to use a scanner. It's going to be, we'll call it file since it's reading in a file, and we'll set it equal to a new scanner. Inside of our scanner, we'll have a new file because we're reading in a file, and then we need the file name, and the book gives us zip code.text. After we do this, we need to import file, and then in our public static void string args, we need to throw a file not found exception just in case it does not find this file. We can do this by hovering over this error and click add throws declaration, and this will automatically throw a file not found exception. After we read in our file, we are going to want to find the coordinates, because we are the way that this works is that when we get a zip code, our program will actually translate that to coordinates, and then from that coordinates we will search an area. We won't be looking at it from a zip code, so we need to translate zip code to coordinates. So we're going to say passing zip to chords. So we need a method to do this, and we're going to store it in a string because our chords are going to be represented as a string. We'll call this string target coordinates. We're going to set it equal to our method, which will be find, and we're going to pass in two parameters. First, we're going to pass in our zip code because we need the zip code to find. So we're going to pass in our target, and then we also need to pass in this file because it has all the zip codes and it will try to match it. So we're going to pass in file like this. We need to create our find method, so we can just hover over it and click create method. This will create our method as private static string find string target, and then we have scanner file as our parameters. For Java documentation, we can just do a backslash, and then we are going to have 2 stars, and then if we press enter, it'll autofill these parameters and our return. So what we're doing is we are searching for the given string in the input file. If found, we're going to return the coordinates. Otherwise, we are going to return 0, 0, and we can just write that in here as our method description. Now it's time to write our method. So inside of here, we're going to try to find the coordinates in our file. This means we have to run file as long as it has the next line. So we'll do while file dot has next line, and in here, the text in the book, the text file that the book is using, has 3 lines that are all associated to each other. They have string zip, string city, and string coordinates, and that are written out like this. So the first line is zip, the next line is city, and the next line is coordinates. And then when the while loop runs again, the next 3 lines are also associated to each other. Now we need to compare our zip code to our target and see if they're the same. So we're going to have an if, and in our if statement we'll have if zip dot equals, and then we will have target in here to see if they are the same. If they are the same, we're going to print out the zip code with a colon to separate them and a space, and then we're going to print out the city as well. And then we just want to return the coordinates again, because this method is trying to find the coordinates. If we break out of our while loop, that means we never found our zip code equal to target, and we are just going to return 0, 0 because there's no coordinates. Now we're going to go back into our main method after we've done our find and our give intro, and we are going to now try to show all the matches in the area. This is going to be based off the miles that the user wants to search for. It's also going to be based off the zip code that they inputted and the file here. So we can write showing all matches in given area, and then after this, well, we've already read through our entire file inside of our find method. So what we need to do is reinitialize, we cannot redeclare. We need to reinitialize this file, and we can write that like this: files equal to new scanner, new file, zipcode.txt. This will reset file, and we don't want to put scanner in front, otherwise it'll conflict because we can't redeclare something like that. We're going to pass this into a method. It's going to be called show matches. And inside of our show matches method, like I said, we want to pass in the coordinates. We're not passing in the zip code because we have to convert that to coordinates. So we're going to pass in target coordinates, and we're also passing in the file because we need to read all the matches in a given area. And then we also want to pass in the miles that we want to look around. So we're going to pass in miles from this input. From here, we need to create this method. We can hover over show matches and click create show matches, and this will create our method. We're passing in the string target coordinates, the scanner file, double methods, and we are returning a void. Before we write our method, we should have a comment explaining what it does in the Java docs, and we can write it like this. Now we can start writing our method. We need a new scanner to go through the target coordinates because it's going to have a latitude and longitude. So we'll have scanner, and we'll call this data, and we'll set this equal to a new scanner, and we want to run through target coordinates, so we can copy this and paste it in here. In our data, we are going to have, like I said, the latitude and longitude, so we're going to have two declarations of a double that will store these. We'll have double lat1, and we are going to set this equal to data dot next double, and then we are also going to have longitude 1, and we're setting that equal to data dot next double. We're going to declare these on the same line, so we only need to write double once and separate these with a comma. Now we need a print line statement that'll tell the user what's happening. So we want to print the zip codes within as a string, and then miles plus miles. So we have zip codes within, and then we have the user input of miles right here, and then we are just having miles like this. And then after this, we are going to do a while loop that goes through our file and tries to see if the target coordinates are in the miles. We're going to have a while loop, and we're going to run through this file. So we have file.hasNextLine, and inside of our while loop, we are going to do what we did in the find method, where we have the string zip, city, and coordinates, because they're all associated with each other, and this is for one area. After we do this, we are going to have our data equal to a new scanner, and we are just going to scan through the coordinates here, because we've already got our target coordinates. So this target coordinates, we don't need it anymore because we've stored it in lat1 and longitude 1. So what we have here is we're going to have data is equal to new scanner, and then inside of here we're just going to have coordinates. That way, every time this while loop runs, it's going to get a new set of coordinates and try to go through them. From here, we're going to store these coordinates the same way we did up here. You can just copy and paste this in here, and then change this to be latitude 1 and longitude 2. Every time this while loop runs, just like this data will reset, these latitudes and longitude 1s will be reset. Now we need to compare our distance to miles. However, we need to convert our latitudes and longitudes into the correct formula for it. We can't really compare just these data points. We have to use a distance formula, and this is a math equation that we'll use a method for inside of this method. So after we have our while loop, we're getting all of these for one line. We are parsing through the coordinates with our scanner, and we are storing them in here. We are going to call this method to do the math for us. We'll call it double distance because we're using the distance formula, the math distance formula, and we're going to do lat1, long1, and we're going to also pass in lat2 and long2, which we can just copy and paste like this and change the numbers. Again, we are creating a method. We are going to create a new method called distance. We are passing these in as parameters, and we are storing it in our distance. We'll come back to this in a second, but what we're going to do here is write an if statement. And that if statement is going to be if our distance is less than or equal to our miles, then we are going to system.out.print. However, we're going to change this print line to be printf, because what we want to have in here is not a print statement. We need to format what we're writing. So we're going to have a string right here. We're going to have a comma, and then what we're formatting on the right. So this is our string. We are going to have a percentage sign, an S, and this is a specific type of format. And then we're going to have a space, and then a percentage sign S, and then a comma. This is part of our string, and then a percentage sign 3.2f, which is a part of formatting, and then miles /n for a new line, which is part of the string. Then we are going to have what we want to format. We're going to have zip, we're going to have city, and we're going to have distance. The zip is going to be associated with this the city is going to be associated with this part, and the distance is going to be associated with this formatting. I'm going to get rid of that, and this looks good so far. So I'm going to get rid of these spaces, and then we can make this method. So we can hover over distance and click create distance. Once we do that, it's going to auto create this method for us, and we can write what it does as well as the parameters and the return. So after we have this written out, we can start writing in our method, which is right here. It's going to be a helper for our matches method, which is right on top of it. So to do our math, we are going to change all of these from doubles into radians. And there's actually a method that'll do this for us. We can say lat1 is equal to math.2 radians. .2 radians. And what this does, it says right here, it converts an angle measured in degrees to an approximately equivalent angle measured in radians. So if we click that, it'll come up like this, and then we can just pass in lat1. We can copy this another time because we need lat2, and then we're going to do the same thing for longitude. So we need long1, and we'll set that equal to math.2 radians, and then we are passing in long1, and we're going to do the same for long2, and we can just copy paste that and change the numbers. After here, we are going to do the actual math. So we are going to have double the cos, and this is just a name and the type that we're storing in. We'll do is equal to, and this is the formula. We have math.sine. So we have the sine of lat1 times the sine of lat2 plus the cosine of lat1 plus the cosine of lat2 times the cosine of the longitude 1 minus the longitude 2. And so this is the formula that we're going to store in the cos. And this is our distance formula. Now we need the arc length. So we'll store this in double arc length. There's also a math method for this. It's going to be math.acos. If we hover over this, we can see that it returns the arc cosine of a value. If we click this, we can pass in the cos. Now we have our formulas done. We can return what we need, which is going to be the arc length times the radius. And we actually never declared the radius. We want to declare the radius of the Earth outside. We want to make it a global variable. And since we're never changing it, it's going to be final. So it will be a public static final double radius. And we're setting this equal to the Earth's radius for now. It's going to be 3,956.6. And then we need to go back down here, and we need to multiply our arc length times the radius. After we do that, our code is complete. From our book, we are given this as our answer. So this is our prompt right here. This is the introduction. And then this is where we're asking what the zip code is. Our user inputs the zip code. We were asking the miles, and we're saying 1 miles. And then it will print this out. It'll print out the location and then zip codes within 1 mile. So the zip codes around that area. And this is the output. So now that we have all of our code written out, we can go over everything. First, we have our package. This is for Eclipse. And then we have our import statements, where we are importing for file not found exception, and for scanners. We have our class, and then we have our public static final double, where we declare the Earth's radius. And this is found by just Googling or knowing the Earth's radius. And then after this, we have our main method, where we have to throw a file not found exception because we are reading in a file here. Or actually, it's more like right here. And then we type out the intro, but instead of just typing it out in our main method, we store it in a separate method down here called giveIntro, where we have our print line statements, and this is just explaining to the user the program. If we wanted to, we could minimize this like this, and now we have less in our way. We can go back up, and then we are getting user inputs. We have a scanner right here that scans for system input, where we do system.in, and then we have a print line statement that asks what zip code that we're interested in, and then the user inputs this zip code and we store it in target. Then we have a print statement where we ask for the approximity in miles. The user inputs miles and we store it in miles. Next, we have a scanner file where we read in our file. After this, we go into our target coordinates to try to find the coordinates of our target. We are converting the zip code into coordinates. If we go down to our find method, because again, the find is our method, we're passing in target and file, and then we're storing it in the string target coordinates. So if we go back down to file right here, it says that we are searching for the given string in the input file. If found, we return the coordinates, otherwise we are returning 0, 0. We have parameter target, parameter file, and return. So this is our method. We have a private static string find. We are passing in the string target, scanner file, and we have while file.hasNextLine. So while there's another line in our file, we are going to be in this loop. The first 3 lines, or the 3 lines that are right after each other in our file, are all connected. We're given the city, the zip, the city, and then the coordinates, all on separate lines, but they're all associated with each other. So we're going to grab them in one run of our while loop. And then we're going to say if our zip equals our target, we're going to print the zip and then the city, and then we are returning the coordinates. If our coordinates are not found, or if we're given an invalid zip code, we're going to return 0, 0. And from here we can just collapse these and go back up to our main method. Now we are stating the file because we've already read through it in our target coordinates. So we need to set file equal to new scanner, new file. So we scan through this file again, and then we are going to pass it as a parameter in our show matches method, where we have our target coordinates, which we got from right here. We have the file, and then we have the miles that we want to look for. And this is showing all matches in the given area. And it's going to be this method right here. We're getting the matches of a certain area. We have target coordinates as our parameter, scanner file, and double miles. So we have a scanner data that's going to go through our target coordinates, because our target coordinates, the coordinates that we return, they have a latitude and a longitude. So this data is basically just parsing them, and then we are storing them in this double lat1 and then this double lat2. And now this scanner is empty. And then we are just going to print out zip codes within a certain amount of miles and then the miles. This is just a print statement. It's not really doing anything to our code. Next we have a while loop. And just like in our previous method, we are running this while file has next line. The first 3 lines are associated with each other, so we are grabbing them all in one run. And then we can reuse this scanner. We can say data is equal to new scanner, where we're scanning these coordinates instead. So first we scan the target coordinates, the one that the user input, and now we are scanning the coordinates that are in the file. So we have data is equal to new scanner coordinates. We're scanning the coordinates, and the double lat2 is going to be data.nextDouble, and longitude 2 is data.nextDouble. And then after we get these, we are going to pass all of our latitudes, longitudes into a distance method that does the math for us, and after we do this, it's going to store it in our double distance. If we look at our distance method, this is just the math for it. This is all basically just a formula, and we're storing it inside of a method here. So we can collapse this and go back up here. And if our distance that's being returned is less than or equal to our miles, we're printing this out. This is our print statement, or it's a printf statement, because we need to format this for our zip, city, and distance. And this is the program finished. This is all the code that we wrote, and this is the methods collapsed for it as well.